I'm Shotgun Tom Kelly, president of the Pacific Pioneer Broadcasters, Hollywood Media Professionals, and we've been honoring people in the entertainment world since 1966. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our archives, and we're going to show you some of the people that we've honored from the past. Today, we conclude our tribute to the talented impressionist and voice actor Rich Little. Join me in viewing the grateful and very humorous acceptance remarks from Rich. Sit back and enjoy.
Alan, of all the introductions I've ever received, that was the most recent. You know, it's amazing. While you people were saying all these nice things about me, I was thinking the same thing. I truly don't deserve this award here today, but what is my opinion compared to thousands of others? Let me say a few words about these wonderful friends of mine that showed up here today because they had nothing better to do. They're beautiful people, they really are. First of all, Loni Anderson. I've always had a crush on Loni Anderson. She is just an incredible lady. I don't really know her that well, but I did kiss her on the Love Boat. Now, Tom Dreesen, I have never kissed. That's because Tom is too busy kissing Frank Sinatra. You know, when Tom Dreesen was 15 years old, his father gave him $20,000 to learn how to become a comedian. Tom, what the hell did you do with that money? But Tom, as you heard earlier, opened for Frank Sinatra for many years. Frank wanted Loni Anderson to open for him, but she wouldn't go for it. And Tom opened many times for Frank. As a matter of fact, the first time that Tom ever opened for Frank Sinatra, he was really a basket case. He didn't think he could do it. And he went to Frank in his dressing room before the show, and he said, "Frank, I am so nervous. I don't think I can do it. God." And Frank took him aside and put his arm on his shoulder and said, "Tom, let me give you a little piece of advice. Just go out there and give it your best shot and do your best material, and remember one thing, nobody came to see you here in the first place." And Tom remembered that. It gave him a lot of confidence. But anyway, I'm thrilled that Tom showed up today because, you know, people say to me, "Where is Tom Dreesen? We never see him." And I said, "Well, Frank passed away." And Tom said, "Really? Nobody told me." But now Ruta Lee is a gem. An imitation, but a gem. She comes from a very unique background, half German, half shepherd. She was a virgin till she was 15, and then again until she was 17. She is very frugal, very frugal. When she goes to a department store, she only buys things marked down. Yesterday, she came home with an escalator. When she goes into a store, she likes to buy antiques. That's where she found Webb. We love Webb, we really do. She is very frugal, Ruta Lee, very frugal. You give her an inch, and she'll decorate it. This is Jimmy Stewart, let me sum up Ruta Lee's career by naming some of my movies. Ruta, you've got to stay happy, so come and live with me. Otherwise, you'll get vertigo. This is no time for comedy. You're a small-time girl, but you've had a wonderful life. And if people don't like you, get a rope. Jimmy Stewart. Now, Peter Marshall. I've known Peter for a lot of years, and he's had an incredible career, and he's a survivor. He really is, and he has not lost it. You know, he hasn't found it, but he hasn't lost it. I thought I would do a few zingers on Peter, and because I'm going to do a couple of zingers on him, I thought maybe Johnny Carson should do these. Johnny. Peter Marshall is a very unusual man. He collects his own autograph. Do you know that when Peter walks down the street, he holds his own hand? He is getting older. It now takes him 2 hours to watch 60 Minutes. When Peter talks to himself, it's a long-distance call. And when Peter's beeper goes off, he thinks he's backing up. Peter and his wife Lori now refer to their waterbed as the Dead Sea. Every time he sees a girl he thinks he knows, it turns out to be his daughter. The picture on his driver's license was done by Rembrandt. And it takes Peter 2 hours now to get undressed at night and 4 hours to figure out why. And as Tom said, during an orgasm, he calls out his own name. But Peter Marshall is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, game show host of all time, really. That's what Alec Trebek told me. I've known Alec for a long time. Alec and I go way back, and we're both Canadians. You know, we were born in Canada, and we've died in Canada a few times, but Canadians are good people. They really are, aren't they, Alec? Yeah. The only thing I don't like about Canadians is the way that some of them come down across our border and take jobs away from our Mexicans. You know the difference between a canoe and a Canadian?
What?
A canoe tips. This is why Alex and I left Canada. This is the kind of humor we were doing in Canada. We thought we better get the hell out of Canada, you know. So we both came to the States at about the same time, you know. I'm of course a little older than Alex. You know, Alex is 28 now, and I'm pushing 80. Boy, am I pushing it, I'll tell you. Oh, God, I've been married so many times. The last time they threw minute rice. And they didn't take it out of the box either. But Peter Marshall, of course, hosted the the Hollywood Squares, and I wasn't a regular on it, but I did it a lot of times, and Paul Lynde was a very strange man. He was funny. I mean, God, he didn't know how funny he was, you know. But he wasn't the friendliest person, but boy, he can come up with the one-liners, I'm telling you. I think the funniest one-liner I ever heard Paul throw on Hollywood Squares was one night Peter Marshall said, "Paul, what does an 85-year-old woman have between her breasts that an 18-year-old woman does not?" And Paul said, "Her navel." Peter doesn't remember that one, but it sounds like him, doesn't it, Peter? Huh?
It does. I'm going to use it.
Yeah. I know you are. And then another time, Peter Marshall said, "Paul, what is the difference between an admiral and a rear admiral?" And Paul said, "I don't know. It depends how long the voyage is." And then Peter one night says, "Paul, can you get an elephant up to your room?" No, I think he's... No, I told it wrong. I says, "Can you get an elephant drunk?" That was the question. And Paul said, "Oh, sure, but you'll never get it up to your apartment." But I tell you, this has been a great thrill for me. I haven't been this excited since watching the Safeway truck unload. And, you know, seeing all these wonderful performers get up here, you know, God. And I'm just very honored because, you know, you think about your career and you think there are a lot of things you wish you'd done over, but, you know, I've been a pretty lucky guy, really, for a young Canadian kid, you know, growing up in Ottawa. And then coming down and doing the Judy Garland show. That was the first show I ever did, was the Garland show in 1964. Wow. And I got on the Judy Garland show actually because of my impression of James Mason. Mel Torme, who was a great friend of mine and a great movie buff, we used to always sit around and watch movies in the buff. And he got me on the Judy Garland show by playing a tape of all my impressions for Judy Garland. And it's interesting, and he said so in his book. When he played this tape for Judy Garland, this is a true story, she wasn't impressed. She said, I forgive me for saying this, but Judy said to Mel Torme, "I don't like impersonators. They make me fart." And so then Mel Torme knew he had a tough battle ahead of him. But when she heard my impression of James Mason, that's what got me on the Judy Garland show, because they'd done A Star Is Born together, and they became great, great friends, and they really admired each other tremendously. And so when I did my impression of James Mason on this tape, that's when she booked me on the Garland show. And I'll never forget what I think I did a speech from A Star Is Born. And I said, listen to me, Esther. A career is a curious thing. Talent isn't always enough. You need a sense of timing, an eye for seeing the turning point or recognizing the big chance when it comes along and grabbing it. A career can rest on a trifle like us here tonight, or it can turn on someone saying to you, "You're better than that. You're better than you know. Don't settle for the little dream. Go on for the big one, because I'm right." That was the speech I did. And then, a couple of years after doing the Garland show, I ran into James Mason at an AFI tribute to John Huston we were at. Remember that, Herb? And I went up to him, and he didn't know me, you know, and I said, Mr. Mason, I want to thank you for getting me on the Judy Garland show. And he said, what the hell are you talking about? I never did no such thing. I said, well, you know, I did an impression of you, and Judy liked it, and I got on the Garland show. And James Mason said, you do an impression of me? I said, yes. What on earth for? I said, well, you're a big star, and everybody wants to hear my impression of you. Well, I'm not impressed. Get out of my way. That was it. But that was my great thanks to James Mason for getting me on the Judy Garland show. But I've just been very lucky in my career because, you know, I started doing impressions of teachers is how I started. And I knew this was going to be my lifetime work because, you know, it wasn't long before the teachers were charging a 2-drink minimum and a cover charge. But I did all my teachers. I used to answer them in class in their voice, and it was usually the wrong answer. And the kids were in hysterics. They just loved it, you know. The poor teacher looked baffled. But that's how I started, imitating teachers, and then I went on to do local politicians in Ottawa, and then did the Prime Minister, and you know, but became fairly popular in Canada, and then I left to come down and do the Judy Garland show, and that was a big turning point for me. I mean, to be on the Judy Garland show, I mean, right off the bat. And but I think in my career, the shows that really helped me were probably the Dean Martin roasts, which I did 24 of, and that they were great fun to do those Dean Martin roasts. You know, I was nervous as hell. I was in my early 20s, and I'm working with all these giants, you know. And you'd look down the dais, and you'd see Lucille Ball and Orson Welles and Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne and, you know, Jack Benny. I mean, and you had to really focus because, I mean, just you were overwhelmed by the whole thing. And I don't know how I kept my composure, but I did it. And it just was an incredible experience for me at such a young age to be on the. So I'd say the Dean Martin roasts were a big help for me in my career, and Hollywood Squares definitely too, because everybody watched Hollywood Squares, and the Tonight Show, you know, with Johnny Carson, and that was a lot of pressure too, you know, because it was just like doing it live. Well, they never stopped tape, but boy, I'm telling you, I would think the Dean Martin roasts and the Tonight Show were the most pressure I ever had because, God, I mean, everybody watched the Tonight Show. And then I ran into Johnny just before he passed away in a restaurant in Malibu, and he came up to me. He said, "Rich, are you still doing me in your act?" I said, "Yeah, sure." You're kidding. You're just saying this to be nice. I said, no, I do you, John. Everybody knows who you are. Honest to God, they do? They remember me? I said, of course they remember you. They'll always remember you. I can't believe you're really doing me in your act. I said, yeah. Well, then, you owe me some money. But that was the last time I saw Johnny Carson. Isn't that amazing, though, that just because he was off the air, you know, for a few years, he thought that was it. But, I mean, even today, people remember, well, not young people, I don't remember Johnny Carson. But most people, well, certainly older people do. I mean, that was to watch The Tonight Show was an event. You know, you rushed home from dinner to watch The Tonight Show. And today, nobody rushes home from dinner to watch any of the late shows, I don't think, you know. Different time, you know, different time. But I was so lucky to imitate all these people, particularly from the 40s, you know, when we had movie stars that had distinctive voices, and they were so easily identifiable. You know, Clark Gable and Humphrey Bogart and Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne and all these great people. But it's tougher today because we've got good actors today. There's no question of that. But we don't have voices like we used to have, you know. And that's why it's difficult to do people like George Clooney, you know, or Matt Damon, or, you know, somebody said to me the other day, do you do Brad Pitt? And I said, no, even Angelina Jolie doesn't do Brad Pitt. But, actually, I'd rather do Angelina Jolie than Brad Pitt, I'll tell you that right now. I would never be lonely, would I? I'd end up jumping myself. But anyway, so it becomes tougher for people to do impressions today, because as I say, we've got great actors, but we don't have voices anymore. And the actors of the 40s particularly were always the same in every movie, and they're easily identifiable, whereas actors today play more, you know, different kinds of parts. And so it's hard to pin them down as much. So I don't know, I do a little Donald Trump, although he's having a little trouble right now doing himself. We are going to build a wall, a great wall, and Walmart is going to pay for the wall, or Walgreens, or Mark Wahlberg. They're going to pay for a great wall, a great wall, a wall, a wall. So it gets tougher, you know, for an impersonator. Because we, as I say, we just don't have the voices anymore. But there's still some great impersonators out there, and I see a lot of them, and a lot of them come to the Laugh Factory, and a lot of the young comics today, they have wonderful writers. You know, they do things like, "Hi, where are you from? Is this your wife, or are you on a business trip?" You know, and you know, but. It's amazing when I see a lot of the young comics today, they go out on stage and they really have nothing prepared. And they just think they'll get lucky, right, Harry? But I love Harry because Harry's different. You know, I love anybody that's different. And for Harry to run around a room, I mean, this is incredible, isn't it, at his age, to run around a room like that? Where the hell was he going? I don't even know what the hell he was doing. I think he was looking for food. I'm not sure, but he's different and a little off the wall. And I love somebody like that because, you know, when you on the roast, when you saw somebody do something like Charlie Callis or something, or Foster Brooks do something, Foster Brooks. I was so drunk I could hardly see him. Anyway. But I just adore all these people, and Tom Dreesen. I'm telling you, Tom is an incredible comic because he's a thinker, and he's got a million stories, and he's a fascinating guy. I just loved it. And Ruta, well, she's just in a class by herself because everybody likes Ruta Lee. Everybody. I've never met anybody that didn't like Ruta Lee. Really, she's known by everyone. You know, and Loni Anderson, as I said, I kissed her, but I didn't know her that well. But she was so warm and so friendly to me, And she's just a wonderful person. And I know this is true because Burt Reynolds told me the same thing. Anyway, we won't go there. But I do love Loni, and I've always had a crush on her, and it was a pleasure to kiss her on the Love Boat. And she didn't tell you, but everybody in the upper deck was all watching, and every time I kissed her, they applauded, you know. And it's true, you know. I kept flubbing my lines because I wanted to keep kissing her, you know. And so we took about 5 hours to shoot that scene, but she was great. And then Peter Marshall, there's nobody better than him. And just some wonderful people up here and saying such nice things about me. And at times I didn't know they were talking about me, but I'm really flattered that you guys came and you know, gave up your lunch hour, and you're still here and you didn't leave. And you know, will you get your check? But anyway, I just am so thrilled, and I couldn't have picked a better bunch of people to pay honor to me today. And it's great to have my daughter Bria here, and Jerry Fisher and Stan. And you guys were just great, and I thank you so much for being here. Just terrific. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. You know, I can already feel the excitement building for our next Hollywood Media Professional Celebrity Showcase.